Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about my BMW E34 520i. I absolutely love this car. I've owned it now for nearly 4 months, and in that time it has broken down twice. First time was about a month in. I went to get into it, I went to go somewhere, put my foot on the clutch and the clutch pedal went straight to the floor. That turned out to be a clutch master cylinder and slave cylinder. I got my mechanic to fix that one. The second time it broke down was, as you've seen in the previous video, the water pump failed and burst the radiator and it overheat, and I actually fixed that one. But despite the breakdowns, I still love this car. I still love driving it. I still love owning it, and I still love looking at it because, I mean, let's face it, this car is gorgeous. Now, the E34 was the third generation of 5 Series after the E12 and E28, and design wise it followed on where those cars finished off. We still retain the quad headlamps. The E34 is actually the last generation of 5 Series to feature quad headlamp design, and I think it's a bit of a shame because it's such a nice looking design feature. Also up front we have the iconic BMW kidney grills, nicely proportioned in this car. This car's actually got what people refer to as the facelift front end, with these wider grills. Earlier E34s came with what many people call the narrow grille, but in the early 90s there was a few engine changes and upgrades made to the E34, such as the M20 6-cylinder engine was replaced by the M50, which is what's in this one, and the 530i straight 6 was replaced by a 530i V8, and that's actually where the wide grille came from. It was to differentiate between a straight 6 530i and a V8 530i. So the straight 6s had the narrow grille and the V8s had the wide grille. But then in 1994, all E34s came with the wide grille. Now down the side, I think we should touch on the wheels for a second, because on first glance they look to be Alpinas, but the keen enthusiast among you will notice they're not actually genuine ones, they are replicas. Now, I bought these because the car came on a set of Style 7s, which were a kind of multi-spoke BBS style wheel. I'll put a picture up. And while there were a plethora of options for wheels available when the E34 first came out, the Style 7s were the only wheel option which came with metric tyres. And unfortunately, nowadays, to buy a metric tyre, it's about £460 each. So I thought, instead of forking out for new tyres, which it did need, I thought, why not just change the wheels? And I thought about getting M parallels, but my previous E34, which I'll talk about later, had M parallels, and I thought, I've always fancied doing Alpinas. So I found these. These came up for sale on Facebook Marketplace. They were very cheap. They came with tyres, and I thought, yeah. So they're now on the car, and I think they look fantastic. If anything, I think the front end just sits a wee bit too high now. Now, there are wee bits of rust here and there, and the likes of this bit at the bottom of the door doesn't quite fit right. I suspect that has probably rusted away as well. So it does need a few wee bits of rust repair here and there, but all in all, it's actually in pretty good shape. There's not too many dents, not too many scratches. Round the back, not too much to say around here. Pretty standard. It has the SE body kit, which is basically just plain bumpers all round, and then single exit exhaust, which was always a way to tell between a 520 and a 525 back in the day. Now, under the bonnet, we have what many consider, and certainly what I consider, to be one of BMW's finest ever engines. It's the M50 B20 TU, or in other words, it's a 2-litre straight 6 petrol engine. It makes 148 brake horsepower and 193 newton meters of torque. And while many E34s came with an automatic gearbox, this one is fitted with a 5-speed manual. Stepping inside, it's like stepping back into the 1980s. It is night and day from the Tesla I drove the other week. There is no massive iPad screen, it's just some simple dials and some buttons. We have down here dual zone climate control, you have where you want the fans to point, you've got air conditioning, you have what I think might be the original head unit. It's a Pioneer unit with a tape cassette player, and then you have a clock, and that's it. You also have this ashtray here. Up here we have the instrument binnacle, which has your fuel, speed, rev counter, and your coolant temperature. And then off to the side you have your lights down here, and your fog lights down here. Like I say, we have a 5-speed manual gearbox, 4 electric windows, electric mirrors. Unfortunately in this car there is no sunroof, but weight saving hay. In the back, there's not really much to see here. It's typical BMW from the 90s. You have your air vents in the middle, you have seat pockets here, and very 80s, 90s is a little ashtray. That's about it. Other than that, there's not much else in this car. It's pretty basic. It didn't really come with that many options from the factory, and yeah, it's basic, but it's everything you need for driving. Talking of driving, why don't you say we start this thing up and take it out for a little spin? This car is lovely to drive. It's smooth, it's quiet, it's comfortable, it's just so effortless to drive. And considering it's nearly 29 years old now, it doesn't feel dated, it doesn't feel old to drive. It still feels like a solid, well-built old car. I've done a fair few miles in this car now. I've actually been daily driving it for the last couple of months now, and been racking up the miles. I've done some long motorway trips. Now, the very first journey I did with it was when I picked it up down near Ipswich, and it was about a 7-hour journey home up the motorway, and it was just so effortless. It was lovely. It was just such a comfortable place to be, and I actually felt when I got home after picking it up that I could easily have went further in it. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the elephant hanging off the roof, and that is the headliner, which is a bit saggy. I'm aware of it. I've attempted to fix it with some sellotape, which clearly hasn't worked. The only way that I can see to do a proper fix on it is to take the whole headliner out, and from what I can tell, I think you have to take the windscreen out, so it's not a job I want to tackle just yet. There's a few other bits and bobs I want to do first, and I'll try another couple of temporary fixes for the time being, just to stop it sagging, because, well, it doesn't look too good, and I actually can't really see much out the back, so yeah, it's not ideal. But yeah, like I said earlier on, I just absolutely love this car. I just love driving it, and I just love the memories that it brings back for me. What's that noise? Strange things happening. Because, well, that was the reason I bought this car. You see, back in 2011, I passed my driving test, and I think in one of my previous videos I mentioned that the first car I drove on the road after passing my test was my Mercedes 230 CE. I had that for 6 months, and then I bought another car, and that car was a BMW E34 520i. And I loved that car. I had it for about 5 years. I drove it pretty much everywhere. Took it on road trips, adventures, and the time came. Well, actually what happened was I bought an E46 M3, and I couldn't afford to keep both cars at the time, especially with my old E34. It was needing a lot of work, and it turned out my M3 also needed a lot of work, but that's a story for another day. So I sold my E34, and I'm not going to say I regretted selling it, but there was part of me that missed it. I missed having an old BMW in my life, even though I had the M3. There was something about the E34, it was just cool, it was just different. And as the years have went by, you don't see as many E34s on the road anymore, and anytime I have seen one, I've thought, oh, I like that, and I always kind of thought to myself, well, why don't I buy another one? But this time I have the experience of the old one, and you know what to do, what not to do, what bits to fix on it, what bits not to neglect, like maintenance. And I thought, yeah, why not buy one and just enjoy it, have it as a nice old classic usable daily driver. So that's what I done. I was sitting one night at home, browsing Facebook Marketplace. Just, I didn't have any intention of buying a car. I was just looking, and then this car came up for sale, and I was looking at it and I thought, it looks quite nice. And first thing that struck me was the colour, Sorrento blue. I hadn't seen one of them before, and I thought, that was quite nice. So I was looking through the pictures, and the second thing that caught my eye was the number plate. Now, my old E34 525 had the number plate M775DGF, and this car has a number plate M775FPV. I thought, oh, that's a sign. So I phoned up the guy, spoke to him a bit. Turned out he was a massive E34 enthusiast. He deals pretty much exclusively in the E34 M5, and I got good vibes from him. It turns out he was selling the car on behalf of an old guy that stayed nearby and used them for mechanical work. So it's been owned by an old guy who had done about 2,000 miles a year for the last 24 years in this car. So it's currently at 125,000 miles, which is quite low mileage for a 29-year-old 5 Series. Anyway, long story short, I jumped on a flight down to Stansted, got a train to Ipswich, met the guy, and immediately fell in love with this car. And I thought, there and then, it doesn't matter, I'm buying this car and I'm driving it home. Now this has become my daily driver. And I know in my previous video, I titled it, Why You Should Never Daily Drive an Old BMW. But I want to contradict myself, because you absolutely should daily drive an old BMW. They're fantastic. I'm not sure if you watched my previous video on the Tesla Model 3, but this could not be any further away from that car. There is no infotainment screen, in fact there's no screens on it at all. And that is not a complaint, because you're just focused on driving. And although it's not an engaging car to drive, it's not sporty, it's not fast, but it is just nice. Everything just feels natural. And you have a 5-speed manual gearbox down here, which there's quite a lot of throw between the gear changes, but I don't mind that. It feels deliberate. It feels like you're interacting with the car. It's still quite smooth, and the clutch isn't too heavy. I don't want to say it's a driver's car, but it kind of is a driver's car, I guess. I think with some lowering springs on this will actually handle quite well, because at the moment it doesn't handle that well. It rolls about and it sort of feels like you're driving a big boat, which again I'm not complaining about, because that's what makes it comfortable. I sometimes feel that if I was to put lowering springs on it for the look of it, it would take away from the comfort of it, but that's something I need to look into. What are the best springs to get to retain that comfort, but also give it a wee bit more of an edge when driving it. And yeah, I just like how everything in this car is so driver focused. I have everything I need right here. I've got my light controls, I've got my instrument display which has my speedometer, my rev counter, fuel and temperature. It's all I need. And if I want to adjust the fan speed or the temperature, all I need to do is look down here. It's right here. In fact, I don't even have to look. I can just feel for it. I know where it is. It's all right here. That centre console is facing the driver, so it's just, everything's just right there. And I think that's where modern cars are just letting themselves down these days. Everything's too technical, everything's in a screen now, everything's all touchscreen, touchpad buttons. There's no buttons on this steering wheel, it's just a horn, that's it. That is all you need. Everything you need is here, it's easily accessible, and it means you can just spend more time looking at the road and enjoying the drive. Let's do a quick acceleration. $60, $70 miles per hour. So it's not fast, but like I said, it doesn't need to be. It's just a comfortable car to just waft about in, and currently doing 70 miles per hour, which is the speed limit on this bit of dual carriageway. And it's quite quiet. There's not a lot of road noise. There's a wee bit of wind noise coming from the front windscreen, which could just be a bit of trim, I'm not entirely sure, but all in all it's pretty quiet, it's smooth, it's very comfortable. But yeah, I can sit here all day, I can sit here for hours and just cruise along. Anyway, I am waffling on and I'm trying to think of something else to say. So what can I tell you about my future plans with this car? Well, see, I don't actually know what I want to do with this car yet, because right now I'm enjoying it as a usable classic, I'm enjoying it as a daily driver. However, part of me really wants to turbocharge this car. I've been watching videos on YouTube and thinking, oh, that looks good, and just the power and the acceleration you can get from it, and part of me is thinking, should I go for a full-on turbo build? And I don't know, I really don't know. And then the other half of me is thinking, well, it's a really nice classic car, it's quite a nice example, it's not perfect, there are bits of rust here and there on the bodywork, but underneath is relatively solid, the engine is solid, there's actually no leaks, which is weird. Maybe that means there's no oil in it. Nah, I'm sure it's fine. And yeah, so it's quite a nice classic, quite a nice original classic. I'm thinking, should I just keep it that way and just preserve it, maintain it, and just keep it as a nice classic car? So that's my two thoughts. What do you think? Comment below, let me know. Should I turbocharge it? Should I keep it standard? And what other modifications should I do to it? Obviously, I've already done the wheels in this car. However, that was, like I said earlier, not a necessity, but it was something that I felt I had to do sooner rather than later, was to swap out the old metric tyres. But as for that, I've not done any other modifications on this car. So, turbo aside, what other modifications would I do to it, or would I like to do to it? After putting the wheels on it, I feel like the front end of the car just sits at a little bit too high. So I would like to get some lowering springs just to bring the front down, just to make it more for a visual thing, really. I know that potentially will tighten up the handling a bit, which is not a bad thing. My only concern with that is that it messes with the comfort of the car. But if I can get lowering springs that retain that OEM ride quality, but give it that lower look and just a little bit better handling, then that's something I would definitely consider. What else? Do you know what, I actually think this car is just nice as it is. I don't think there's much else I would do. Potentially, I liked my previous E34 which had the rear spoiler, so I would potentially look at getting, oh, there's a new Genesis, that's quite nice. Mine had a rear spoiler which I like the look of, so potentially that could be something I might look into, getting a rear spoiler for this car. Intake and exhaust, well, obviously if I go down the turbo route, that's going to have to happen anyway, but if I don't go down the turbo route, then I would maybe like to get an exhaust for it. And again, similar to the comfort, I don't want to go crazy, I don't want to make it the loudest thing out there, I don't want to make it sound like a boy racer, just something just to open up that 6-cylinder a wee bit, just to have that wee bit of a straight 6 zing to it. Sometimes I think you can go too far with an exhaust system and you end up, it just doesn't sound that good. These old BMWs, there's a point in the volume where they sound just right, they have just enough of that BMW tone to it, but not enough to be obnoxious in your face. So an exhaust is an option. Again, comment below, do you know any exhaust manufacturers that suit the E34? I know I used to look into it back in the day, and Eisenman, Remus, what was the other one? Super Sprint, I think they were one. They seem to be the common manufacturers for exhaust on E34s, but I've not owned an E34 for quite a few years now, so if there's any new manufacturers out there or any other solutions for an exhaust, then comment below, let me know. I'd be interested to find out. So the question you're probably all wondering right now is, well, how much did I pay for this car? So in April 2024, with 125,000 miles, near enough a full year's MOT, I paid £1,400 for this car. And I think I got a bargain. I mean, I can't see anything majorly wrong with it. Sure, it had a couple of breakdowns in the first couple of months, but that was always going to happen. There was always going to be weak points, weak spots, and I drive my cars, I do miles in them, so I'm going to expose those weak points, so I'm fine with that. So, did I get a bargain? Have I paid too much? I don't know, because the market for E34s it's hard to tell. Some of them are crazy money and some of them are really cheap, and yeah, it's kind of hard to tell with an older car just how much it's actually worth. But like the old saying goes, a car's only worth as much as somebody's willing to pay for it, and I was willing to pay £1,400 and I'm happy with that. Am I going to sell it? I have no plans to sell it, and in my head I'm thinking I'm just going to keep this car for as long as I can afford to. This isn't a car that I've bought to sell on, or that I've bought and, you know, will eventually trade up or whatever. This is just a car that I've bought purely because I want this model of car, the E34, and I'm happy that I've got one again. I'm happy that there's an E34 back in my life. So yeah, I have no real plans to sell this car. I just want to enjoy it, enjoy ownership, and it's very sunny now, so I'm going to put my sunglasses on. I can see the beach, so I'm going to end the video there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned for plenty more to come.